Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Hello everybody. We'll be starting in just a couple minutes. We're doing some final tests as this is my first stream. Starting in a couple minutes. Hello everybody. This is Max. This is the first time I'm streaming on the Slytherin channel. Welcome everybody. I'm the associate producer, currently working on Distant Worlds 2 factions Atuuk and Wekkarus. And today I'll be previewing you the new content expansion for Distant Worlds 2, which we're really happy to bring. Just as a note, since this is my first stream, there may be some audio or connection issues or visual issues. Please let me know if any of those come up so that I can make sure everything's all set on my end. Otherwise, we're planning to do a nice 2-hour-long stream. We'll go over the Atuuk and Wekkarus, talk about their features, talk about their content, do a little bit of gameplay overview, answer some questions, and all that. So, this is our first preview stream before Atuuk and Wekkarus releases. Atuuk and Wekkarus will release tomorrow, Thursday, April 3rd. So for anyone excited for some more Distant Worlds 2 content, this is the time to get yourself familiarized with what the Atuuk and Wekkarus are all about. We'll just give it a minute or two for some more folks to filter in, and we'll begin the show. Alrighty, so let's talk Atuuk and Wekkarus. And actually, one last thing before we get into that. For anyone who's been interested in Distant Worlds 2 but who hasn't picked it up yet, currently there's a great opportunity to do so. Distant Worlds 2 is part of the Humble Choice, so if you head on over to Humble Bundle, you'll be able to pick up Distant Worlds 2 for great value, and perfect time to do so as we're very shortly going to be releasing this new content expansion for Distant Worlds 2. So, now let's get into Atuuk and Wekkarus. We'll start off by going over the Atuuk, probably the most fun faction. For anyone who's familiar with Distant Worlds universe, know that the Atuuk fun little furballs are can be considered a bit of a meme, kind of a humorous faction, but I think for Distant Worlds 2 we've done a really good job of making them a full-fledged, interesting player on the galactic stage. So let's talk about what the Atuuk are all about. Obviously, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. I have it up here. I'll do my best to respond. I know that there are a couple of folks from Slytherin also eyeing the stream, so if there are any questions that I can't answer or I'm busy discussing other things, they'll handle that. So let's talk Atuuk. Start off with their personality. The Atuuk are a very energetic, naive faction. They're the youngest faction amongst all the Starfarers in the galaxy. They've basically only recently discovered faster than light travel before the Great Cataclysm hit and sent them back and sent everybody back to the Stone Age, so to speak. So with their personality, we tried to reflect that awe and interest in the galaxy, but as well as sort of capture their lack of experience dealing with some of the more jaded or veteran players on the galactic stage. So as such, the Atuuk aren't particularly aggressive. They're not the most warlike. Obviously, if you piss them off, they're just like anybody. They'll probably not like that so much. In terms of their level of caution, as we said, they're energetic, they're naive, they want to explore the galaxy, so they're not particularly cautious. They like to go bumble about and see what the galaxy has to offer. But they are quite dependable, which makes them pretty solid allies. We'll get into their bonuses and show why they're not particularly, or they want to be an ally with somebody else, because they have certain strengths and weaknesses, which makes them really great at diplomacy, but doesn't make them, shall we say, the biggest powerhouse of the galaxy. So having them as a diplomatic partner, solid choice. In fact, one of their strengths and one of their personality quirks, you could say, for the Atuuk is their massive reproduction rate, similar to that of the Gizurians. This is to offset some of their other disadvantages, which we'll go into shortly. To reflect the Atuuk energetic facets, they have an increased migration tendency. So as you settle new colonies, they'll really want to go expand and increase their population and really make these large colonies, because there are a lot of Atuuk in the galaxy. And then finally, sort of related to their more dependable, kind of agreeable nature and also slightly gullible nature, the Atuuk are easier to assimilate. So having them under your yoke, if you're, say, a Gizurian or a Dayut or a Baskara, the Atuuk will probably give you fewer problems than some of the other factions out in the galaxy. Now, in terms of where the Atuuk want to hang out, what their preferred colonies are, basically they want colonies that are green. So ideally forests, grasslands, and mangrove forest planets. Though, again, there are lots of Atuuk. They expand or they grow their population rapidly, so they have some adaptability in their reproduction rate, that they're able to settle other planets, but greener is what they like. So now let's get into their bonuses, where the meat of their faction features start to come out. So as you can see, there's a whole list of negative bonuses, like minus 15% all research, minus 10% diplomacy, war weariness, and so on, with a couple of exceptions. We're trying to illustrate that the Atuuk are they're not particularly great at any particular area of their economy or what other empires might be good at. So, for example, like the Quamino are very specialized on research, or the humans are a bit more varied and generalist, but they have some bonuses and have some drawbacks. The Atuuk are just kind of, you know, childlike in their approach to the galaxy, which means they haven't learned enough, they haven't really developed enough, and they're not exactly the smartest, but they have certain ways to counteract that and balance that, which we'll get into in a moment, related to the Great Direction, as Eric mentions in the chat. But we did want to give the Atuuk a couple of strengths or a couple of features, just not to make them the worst faction, because that's just too easy and not particularly fun for gameplay purposes. So to reflect their naivete and interest in the galaxy, the Atuuk are generally quite happy, which means you can get more out of their colonies in terms of tax rate. And obviously, because there are a lot of Atuuk per ship and a lot of Atuuk just generally running around in the galaxy, we've given them a higher boarding defense strength so that it's harder to capture their ships and stations, because there's a lot of Atuuk when you board it. So be ready to be resisted by a whole bunch of cute furballs. And then finally, to reflect their more diplomatic lean and desire to kind of fit into the galactic community, they have an increased chance to gain some new ambassadors. This also means that they don't have as high a chance to get some scientists, but that sort of ties into their more gullible, lowered intelligence compared to some of the other factions. Now, one thing I want to point out before we get into the special features and mechanics of the Atuuk is this new feature that we introduced with the control update, which was meant to support the Atuuk Wekkarus content expansion, which is the notion of psychic resistance. Psychic resistance, in particular for the Atuuk, as you can see here, is set at 100%, which essentially means the Atuuk are immune to psychic abilities if they are, well, under attack or affected by psychic abilities. This ties quite neatly into the Return of the Shakturi expansion, where the Shakturi, as many of you may know, are proficient at using psychic abilities and weapons. The Atuuk, even though they may not be the strongest or may not have special tech, which we'll get into very soon, they're quite a useful ally to deal with the Shakturi, since Atuuk are just psychic abilities kind of bounce off of them. I won't spoil the story too much, because as this is a content expansion, both the Atuuk and the Wekkarus have their own narrative, and the narrative will explain some of the worldviews and some of the features that the Atuuk have codified in game data. But let's just say there's some interesting things about the Atuuk that make them good allies to have against the Shakturi. One thing to note, though, is classically in most Distant Worlds 2 games, there will be lots of factions in your empire. You know, you can have Atuuk, you can have Tikan, Gizurian, Hakonish, depending on how the situation develops. Do note that this psychic resistance only extends to Atuuk-specific troops, units, and ships. So if you have, say, a mixed army of, say, some Mortalan troops and some Atuuk troops and maybe some Akdarian troops invading a planet that has, say, Shakturi or any psychically adept units, this psychic resistance will only extend to the Atuuk units proper. So now let's get into the Atuuk major features and what really makes them special. First of all, we tied their main mechanics, or the meat and potatoes of their faction, into what we call the Great Direction. So the Great Direction is both reflective of how the Atuuk operate, but also how the Atuuk can mitigate some of those negatives that we explored in that large negative bonuses list. So number one, the Great Direction is going to be a periodic council or change of focus for the Atuuk faction. Every 5 years, you'll be given a choice of 3 different Great Directions, and there are a total of 7 Great Directions, which we'll go over once we get into some gameplay overview. You'll be able to choose a particular Great Direction. Some can benefit research, some can benefit espionage, some can benefit speed and research, sort of a combination kind of Great Direction, and those grant you large bonuses in a very specific area of your empire. Again, research, colony income, that sort of thing. We'll talk about it later. But this just sort of shows that at strategic moments, maybe in good moments or inopportune moments, the Atuuk will faction itself just from their own internal excitement will basically want to change these great directions to take them in new places to show their greatness. And in particular, with the Great Direction, not only will you be granted bonuses for that specific Great Direction, you'll also get a unique victory objective or victory condition that's different from any other faction. Or most other factions have to fulfill various percentages and various conditions of like get this or have the most amount of planets or various sorts of things. The Atuuk victory conditions will be focused on completing specific objectives. Some are easier, some are harder, but I think all of them are quite thematic in what the Atuuk are trying to achieve. We'll go over some of those objectives once we get into gameplay, but that's how the Great Direction generally works. Now, also tied with the Great Direction is the Atuuk leadership change mechanic. So Atuuk will still be able to choose a government, so like monarchy or democracy, but they will not be able to choose or change their leaders in the standard way that governments do. Like you can dismiss a leader, or in democracy you'll get a consistent leader change at regular intervals. For the Atuuk, they, alongside their Great Direction, will have a chance to select a new Great One. So every time they change a Great Direction, perhaps the old Atuuk leader isn't particularly, shall we say, in line with the current Great Direction. So there will be a chance where he'll get a pop-up saying like, oh hey, the previous Great One, not really fitting for the current Great Direction, let's choose a new Great One. It's a 25% chance per Great Direction change, so there will be occasionally stretches where you won't see a Great One pop-up, or Great One change pop-up, but no doubt at some point the Atuuk will want to kick the old guy out and bring in somebody fresh. However, whenever you choose the Great One, there's a chance that this supposed Great One is actually not the Great One. There's going to be basically a check. Once you select your Great One, you think everything's all set, fine and dandy, the Atuuk are partying. Sometimes maybe the Great One that you chose just isn't quite cutting it, and they'll gain a trait called Not the Great One. Now, the Great One trait ties into the Atuuk overall happiness and desire to move forward with their faction, whereas the Not the Great One is basically opposite of that. Like, a lot of Atuuk will be unhappy about the current Great One if they turn out to be not the Great One. If a Not the Great One ends up appearing, or the chosen Great One is actually not the Great One, you will be able to choose a new one 1 year later. So it's not all bad for the Atuuk, shall we say. They're very much interested in finding the Great One who will lead them on to their next Great Direction. Tied with this leadership change, players will be able to kind of direct and prepare for which characters they want to be a Great One. One thing I forgot to mention, obviously, is when the Great One choice pops up, you'll be choosing from your list of characters. It won't just be some kind of random characters just popped up out of nowhere. But what will happen is In between each Great Direction change, the Atuuk characters from your list will present themselves as candidates for being the Great One. This is the Who's the Great or Who's Great event. You'll be presented with a choice of 2 characters, and it could be random. It could be an admiral and a spy, it could be a scientist and an ambassador, it could be 2 spies. Again, it's a random choice from your pool, and you'll be able to choose which character will get a great potential trait, which is basically marking a specific character to be like, okay, you are now able to participate, or you're now able to participate in the Great One choice mechanic. The benefit with Great Potential is when you choose a character, they'll gain the Great Potential trait, and they'll gain a bonus positive trait. So this is a way to not only manage your leadership change, but also it's a way to improve some characters that maybe you don't want to have participate in the Great One change. For example, like if you have a really good admiral and you give them great potential, but you're giving them great potential to get that extra positive trait to get like a really sweet admiral. There may be a situation, of course, since the Great One mechanic does pull from the list of characters that you already have, likely with great potential, that maybe your best characters are the ones who are present, so you may have to promote your best admiral or your best general to Great One and help lead the Atuuk in a good direction, or in their great direction. Now, to capture some of the other elements of the Great Direction, there's an occasional negative penalty that pops up depending on the Great Direction that you choose. There's a small chance that whatever Great Direction you choose, the Atuuk aren't particularly happy about it, or they're kind of they're doubting if this was truly the right way to go. So it'll be a limited colony happiness penalty across the Empire, but it shouldn't last too long. It's just sort of an adjustment period. Now, we decided to experiment a little bit with the Atuuk more humorous and maybe more exploratory side, the fact that they want to try different things. There are 2 funky features or events that we've added. One is rapid unscheduled disassembly. So remember I said that the Atuuk were only, A, they're not particularly intelligent, and B, they only recently started their galactic journeys with recently gained FTL travel. Well, let's just say the Atuuk are they're not the greatest engineers, and to reflect that, we have this feature called Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly, where occasionally state-owned ships, like exploration ships, military ships, construction ships, may get, shall we say, damaged or outright blow up during their travels across the galaxy. This shouldn't happen too often, but Atuuk safety standards are a little different, or maybe a little lax compared to some of the other factions. So, yeah, be ready for some occasional surprise fireworks from their fleet of ships. And then, probably my favorite feature of the Atuuk is, what does this button do? So, what does this button do triggers off a critical research success, not when you crash a research project, but just when your Atuuk scientists get a big brain idea. You can push the button. Apparently all Atuuk research stations are equipped with this big, juicy, glowing red button, and whenever there's a critical research success, an Atuuk scientist is going to want to push that button. If you don't push that button, you're going to avoid any kind of bad effects, shall we say. But if you push the button, there's a whole range of effects that can happen. Maybe some good research boosts, or maybe a new scientist appears, or maybe some kind of unexpected fireworks happen on the research station, which ceases all communication with that research station. So I'll leave it to you to experiment with what the button does, but it's a fun part of the Atuuk. They like pushing the button. Let's just put it that way. And finally, we have a couple more lower end features for the Atuuk, but also I think reflect their faction playstyle. Number one, we want to really capture the fact that even though their troops are perhaps on the lower side in terms of strength, the Atuuk obviously are stronger when in great numbers. So we have deadly in numbers. If you outnumber the enemy with just the sheer number of troops you have, you're going to gain an extra ground combat bonus for them. So more likely to offset any kind of troop-to-troop disadvantages there. And then finally, to accentuate the Atuuk desire to prove their greatness and be part of the greater galactic community, there's an event called We Are Great. Whenever you sign one of those major diplomatic treaties, like a free trade agreement or a research agreement or a defense treaty, you'll get a bonus to happiness and colony corruption reduction, because you're kind of fitting the Atuuk into the greater galactic community, as previously said. Since we decided not to give the Atuuk their own unique tech, because they just haven't been around for that long to really develop their own unique technology, we decided to give them an expanded range of traits. So we already talked about the Great One and not the Great One. That's tied with the Great Direction and possible Great One changes. But there are a couple of other traits like Prosperous for the leader, or First of Many to just show that the Atuuk really like to expand their population quickly. And then they have a range of various spy, scientist, admiral, general, and ambassador traits. And obviously a couple more ambassador traits, since that's their more specialized character. A character that they tend to see more often and use more often. In terms of their starting research, they're not particularly advanced. They have missiles and kinetic weapons. They like to shoot big rockets with lots of explosives at their enemies, or they like to throw big, heavy things at the enemy as their main damage modes. But of course, as Distant Worlds 2 is a sandbox game, you can decide to take them on different paths depending on the situation. In terms of their unique technologies, while they don't have unique components or ship upgrades, they do have a couple of unique facilities that are obviously tied to their research path. We'll focus on Collection of Great Things and Intergalactic Welcome Center. Collection of Great Things is basically, call it an Atuuk museum. It combines all the amazing things the Atuuk have gathered across their travels, artifacts, maybe junk, but they find it really cool. And it's basically a wonder of sorts that only the Atuuk can build. They can only build one in their empire. It adds some research and colony development. It's basically a monument to their achievements of going out and exploring the galaxy. And then the Intergalactic Welcome Center in particular is related to their desire to be part of the galactic community. This is also a major wonder, so it can only be built once in the galaxy, or at least once for the Atuuk faction. And it increases migration draw, and also helps with diplomatic arrangements further. So as you expand throughout the galaxy, you'll find new empires that you may do migration treaties with, or have just general good relationships with. And the Intergalactic Welcome Center is a way to pull more interest towards your faction. In particular, migration draws is a unique feature to it. Now, some of you have already pointed out that the Atuuk have the boom device. I'm not going to speak about this one too much, but what this is the unique Atuuk planet destroyer component. For anyone who owns Return of the Shakturi and also buys Atuuk and Wekkarus, or owns Atuuk and Wekkarus, you will gain access to the Atuuk and Wekkarus unique planet destroyers. We'll not be demonstrating that today. because we want to focus specifically on the Atuuk and the Wekkarus. But safe to say we haven't left the Atuuk and Wekkarus to the wayside, and they will tie in, or they have some content tie-in with the Return of the Shakturi expansion. So the boom device is basically the Atuuk planet destroyer component. The one thing I can say about it, just to get people excited to see it with Return of the Shakturi, is unlike most of the other planet destroyers, which have a super weapon like the Mortal and Ancient Planet Destroyer already in the game or whatnot, the Atuuk get a ramming ship. Basically looks like one giant ram, you fling it at a planet and you blow it up. That's how it works. The most Atuuk thing that can be ever imagined, I think. Brain fart buck, wouldn't surprise me if it sometimes blew up your own planet. Well, let's just don't use your own planet for target practice, shall we say, with your Atuuk boom ship. So yeah, and then otherwise the Atuuk have their hunting party, one of the weaker basic troops, but again, the idea with the Atuuk is that you want to be using them in large numbers. And then in terms of diplomacy and their relationships with the other factions, you could basically split their preferences to factions that they do like and factions that they're a bit more ambivalent on, like, say, Beskara, Mortallon, Gazurian, Daiut, Slukin, a lot of the factions that either don't like other factions or kind of want to, conquer them and enslave them or turn them into babies, like what the Gazurians do. They probably would love the Atuuk to convert them into food for their larvae to further expand. But that's I digress. So why don't we get into some actual Atuuk gameplay? So let's get started. Alright, so here we are. We are sort of transitioning from early to mid-game in the early to mid-game parts of this campaign. We've gone through the initial expansion. We have a colony. We have another colony on the way where we're going to colonize some Ugnari to help expand our reach to other colonies, specifically with colder tundra worlds. So, some things I want to point out immediately. Some of you might already notice this group of buttons or flags up at the top. These here are the Great Direction special victory conditions that I talked about when you choose a Great Direction. And I'm sure as we get into gameplay, we'll see the Great Direction choices pop up, and we'll talk about that in more detail. But right now, I have unlocked 6 of the 7 Great Directions. So for example, excuse me, for the first one, Great Direction, Richer, you need to have 50,000 credits, cash flow, or greater. So basically, focus on your economy, you'll achieve this victory condition. Great Direction, Multiply, probably one of my favorite Great Directions to start off with, or if you have a whole bunch of colonies, young colonies with the Atuuk, this is a great direction, a great direction to choose, because it'll help you grow more quickly. And the goal of this is to reach a massive population across the galaxy. Basically a later game victory condition. Then there's Sneakier, to prove to the galaxy that the Atuuk are the sneakiest of them all. Your goal is to find and steal a tasty level 6 technology, because the Atuuk themselves may have difficulties getting to that point themselves. As we saw, they're quite reduced in their research capabilities. Then another one is the Great Direction, Smarter. This is actually researched properly, a level 6 or higher technology. Stronger is go out, find an enemy battleship or carrier and blow it up. So again, this is kind of a later game objective. go show that you're the strongest by finding the biggest ship and blowing it up. And then finally, the last one is friendlier, which is to sign a new defense treaty, which is a pretty major treaty and something that the Atuuk want to do anyways, because again, they want to develop their connections with the galactic community and be part of alliances and strong relationships for trade and all that. Now, one great direction we haven't unlocked yet, and maybe we can unlock if we're lucky, is faster. I'll leave the bonuses and the objective to later, but if it comes up, we'll choose it and go from there. How this looks like on the victory conditions screen is if we take a look at the faction-specific victory conditions, instead of what you would normally see of various percentage thresholds of completing, a certain amount of this or having the most planets and it's compared with one of the other factions. Here it's just literally complete these objectives and you'll get closer to victory. That's sort of the Atuuk way and their target for winning their game. So for this game, we've already found a couple of pirates nearby. In fact, Atuuk pirates. And because when you start out, you're not particularly strong, and the Atuuk ships, shall we say, are perhaps not the greatest in terms of their own abilities, like, again, no unique components or anything like that. Their strength comes in numbers, as we've mentioned. What we need to do here is we have this nice Keterov independent colony that I have a pretty good relationship with, so I do want to expand in that direction. But of course we have some pirates that we have a protection treaty with, but I'm sort of in a position to start thinking about, okay, we might want to take the war to the pirates so that we have kind of a nice established zone of influence, if you will, without harassment from pirates, so that we can then start dealing with perhaps some of our neighbors. And as a result of this, I've laid out some technology that I want to research to basically prepare my war fleet with. We have some new railguns, basic point defense, enhanced missiles, and we also want to get a new hyperdrive so that we can travel across the galaxy more quickly. So we're mobilizing to go fight the pirates, and otherwise we're also looking for some new colonies to settle, because as the Atuuk, we want to rapidly expand, if possible, get our Atuuk populations out there and growing quickly. So let's begin. Our current fleet is not particularly large, not particularly great. We're currently dealing with a Gravelix not too far away. We're also looking for some research stations if there are any nearby, because, again, Atuuk themselves aren't particularly smart, so if there's any way to increase their research ability, that would be great. Or at least will help you go through the tech tree faster, but probably still at a disadvantage compared to some of the others. So let's see, we should have Tashter Sinka, or Sinica, colonized very soon, so we'll add the Ignari to the Atuuk Empire. And how wonderful, some more pirates. Atuuk don't particularly like pirates. Nobody really likes pirates, but can we stop with these pirates? Thank you very much. And for now, I think I'm going to take this protection agreement with the Vicious Claw League, because again, our fleet isn't particularly ready yet to face off against pirates. That's what we're going for, but we're not there yet. The plan is to start a major construction program, build up some new fleets, and go fight the pirates, and let our exploration ships see if we can find some good neighbors to start dealing with. Any kind of resources that we're missing out on? Let's see. Elisea has some Wiconium, which is a decent luxury resource because it grants extra happiness, and we know that the Atuuk are generally happier, so anything that can buff that further to increase their tax rate, get some more money out of that, let's go for it. While the game is running here, I want to talk about one of the bonuses that we're getting, because the current Great Direction I have is friendlier. I was using this Great Direction specifically to help speed up my diplomacy with the Ugnari and also with the Kedarov here. As you can see with the bonus, you get increased diplomacy, which is helpful when dealing with other factions and independent colonies. You have PSYOPs, which is part of a unique set of espionage missions, and of course increase happiness across your empire. So this is another way to buff up your happiness, and again, pump that tax rate if so inclined. We'll pump the game up to ×8 because currently we're just sort of waiting for the technology to be researched. In fact, we can probably crash research these because we want to get our fleet built up more quickly. And while we're at it, we'll continue speaking to the Kedarov colony here and see if we can get them on our side. So let's see, we have a limited trade agreement with them. And how lovely, a Wekkarus pirate faction. Here's a quick preview of what a Wekkarus pirate leader looks like. Very dangerous, very alien. Not quite sure where they are as in their base, so we can't really fight them, so we'll let our exploration ships go and explore. My eye is on these two Atuuk pirate factions here. And again, since we're kind of standoffish with the pirates, we're going to ask for a protection treaty. For now, I really don't want the initial pirate trouble as we get ourselves set up to fight. So we'll talk with the Kedarov here. We'll give them a nice gift, and we'll get a free trade agreement with them. That way we can maybe go send out a colony ship to get them. Yes, we'll go and do that. Then we have a couple of planets here that are quite nice for the Ignari. Okut, Gak 5, and Araguj 4. Since we have plenty of money and we want to expand, I think we should go ahead and queue these up for colonization, sort of another phase of colonization. Obviously not with Atuuk this time, with Ugnari, but again, let's get ourselves expanded further. I'm not really going to go to Smetuis here because the planet itself is relatively small. It's a pretty juicy planet though, but maybe there's something more interesting around before I pick this planet up. Beowulf, you're telling me Wekkarus fried this rice. I don't know. Would a Wekkarus pirate fry your rice? I'm not sure. Let's see. We're also looking for some Atuuk resort bases to just get some of that private cash from here into our coffers. So let's see. We have a contact with the Actarian Ascendancy. All right. So they came in from this angle, it seems, here. So that probably means the Actarians are kind of in this area. Actarians, pretty solid faction to be friendly with. Obviously I don't know what their territory is. I don't really want to make any major campaign plans. So we'll try and befriend them initially. We'll see how things develop as they go along. All right, Hakanish, the Kunder Federation down here. So they're probably going to be somewhere around here, maybe, or over here. Probably not around the nebula. So they've probably kind of migrated, or at least are sending out exploration ships from this area past this nebula boundary. Now the Hakanish, obviously, they themselves are kind of xenophobic. I want to see more of their territory before I make any major decisions on how to approach them. Okay. Now I'm going to leave the technology here for enhanced missiles and Garak's hyperdrive crashed because I want to see if we can get the push the button mechanic to go through. Obviously, it's a bit randomized because critical research successes happen from your characters. So we'll see. The Garrix hyperdrive, since it'll take some time to research, is most likely where we'll see some, or possible that we'll see some kind of push the button action. So we're hoping for that. Otherwise, let's take a look at some of our characters. Who do we have here? The current great one is Klose-Ivanov, who's a pretty solid leader. They have inspiring presence, which buffs up any other characters in the same location as them. They have First of Many, which is the unique Atuuk trait, which helps with population growth. They are indeed the Great One, as you can see by their lovely attire. I wish I had that kind of costume, which grants colony happiness, and they are an industrialist, which kind of counteracts some of that population growth bonus that we get from First of Many, but this at least helps build up a fleet more quickly. Otherwise, we have Zekto Kazentri, Akuru, Sazul. We'll talk about them in a moment. Alright, so rapid unscheduled disassembly. What has happened? Atuuk Engineering strikes again. One of our ships, the fuel tanker Valiant Navigator. Valiant Navigator indeed. Has suffered severe damage in an explosion. The ship has survived, but will need repairs. We'll probably build our ships more robustly, but that takes too long, and it's not the Atuuk way. Exactly, why... We'll probably do some improvements to our construction standards, but why bother? We could just build some more fuel tankers, and we'll use these rapid unscheduled disassemblies to study why this is occurring. So let's take a look. Valiant Navigator has suffered some damage. They're out in space, and let's see here. So luckily they didn't suffer as much damage that would shut off their hyperdrive, but as you can see, they're not in great shape here. Not Your Business 63. How often this event happens? It's supposed to happen occasionally. Sometimes it'll happen maybe once every year. And again, it should focus on the ships that are currently in hyperdrive travel, because that's obviously increased stress on your ships. But you could also have increased periods where this doesn't occur. It's sort of a random check that happens in the background, but it shouldn't happen too often. Like, you're not going to see, or at least you shouldn't see, 3 ships in a row, like one after the other, every month blowing up. You won't be seeing that. This is more of an occasional disturbance for the Atuuk ship park, if you will. So there we go. So we're working on the Garrix hyperdrive, and now we have some more research stations to build. One over at the Keterov colony that we want to colonize, and Freto. I'm going to go ahead and queue those. Let's see, Purgator is probably the one that has the Gravelexes there, so we have our fleet here that's pretty beat up, going off to face off against those Gravelexes, hopefully clear this out. Alright, so we've colonized this new Keterov independent colony. Gluyuyuiv. Lovely name. So we're getting ourselves set up quite nicely here. We got some Ignari, we had another Atuuk colony. This happened sort of off-screen in preparation for the stream. This is one of the Atuuk story worlds. I won't spoil what the story is, but we had a good relationship with these Atuuk, and they invited us to take ownership of their colony. So we have some Keterov here, very good. You can sort of see the Hakonish starting to establish their territory over here. Say that name 5 times fast. Yeah, Gluyuyuiv. Gluyuyuiv. Is that like a new Atuuk drink, or a new diplomatic practice? We do the Gluyuyuiv. Alright, so Purgator has been cleared of Gravelex. We'll go and schedule that for a research station. 580 is, so it's only ships and not bases as well. So rapid unscheduled disassembly should only affect state ships, so like your warships, your exploration ships, your construction ships, rarely maybe colony ships. It's not impossible, but typically colony ships are they don't have that much lifetime anyway, so they kind of go off on their mission. Whereas exploration ships and various other ships are more commonly in hyperspace, right? And bases. Well, I did talk about push the button, didn't I? Let's just say that there's one effect, one possible effect when you push the button. It may or may not have some interesting effects to your research station. So we'll leave it at that. But yes, rapid unscheduled disassembly really should only focus on your state ships. So, this is a good time to talk about the Who's Great mechanic. This is tied into the preparing your two characters to take on the role of possible Great One when you change the Great Direction. So, the time has come to designate Great Atuuks for the future. We must select between the following two candidates, Ambassador Zekto Kuzentri and Spy Ageru Vangu. The selected character will gain the Great Potential trait and will be eligible for future selection as the Great One, as I explained. The Great Potential trait also adds an extra positive trait to the character. Additionally, their skill levels increase. Whom do we see with Great Potential? Doofenshmirtz is proud for the red button. Indeed. Let's take a look at our characters here. So we have Ambassador Zekto Kuzentri. So he's a relatively young ambassador. He has trade income +7. He's inspiring presence. So I kind of want to keep him around since he's helping out other characters. But it might be useful to buff him up further to see what he has to offer. Then we have Spy Ageru Vangu, who's also untested. So, to be perfectly honest, I don't really want to have Zekto Kuzentri chosen as a possible candidate for the Great One. I think I want to go with Spy Ageru Vangu, because I want to keep Zekto Kuzentri around for the inspiring presence. It's a very useful trait with some of your other characters. So we're going to select Spy Ageru Vangu. So let's take a look at what happens with them when we do this. So Spy Ageru Vangu, and they have the Great Potential trait here, and interestingly, it added uninhibited, which is great for partying or talking, but not particularly great for a spy. So even though they had great potential, it seems like they're not particularly great at this point. So he's a likely candidate to be dismissed. But again, the Who is Great event is going to happen pretty often. So you'll be able to mark your more characters with great potential as you go forward. So in fact, we can take a look here. If I have some other characters, Zekto Vangu here has great potential and is a really good admiral. Even though I gave him great potential, I probably don't really want to use him because he's such a good admiral. Duanga Turfaz, one of our generals, he's a pretty good candidate for being a great one here. And then Bekta Kodansta also has great potential. So we have some candidates for a possible great one change. Well, at least he's uninhibited. That's what you get for denying Zekto's destiny. Indeed, perhaps Zekto Kuzentri was the true great one, and I denied his destiny. So, we saw the Who's Great mechanic, and now the flagship feature of the Atuuk, which is the Great Direction. So, again, this happens roughly every 5 years, and you'll be able to choose a new Great Direction. You'll obviously not be able to choose the same Great Direction that is currently active, because the Atuuk want to switch gears. That's the whole point of the Great Direction. Kind of excitement for new things. I was really hoping that Faster would show up here, but obviously the Great Direction chooses from a pool of 3 random Great Directions, obviously weighted towards ones, or should be weighted towards ones that you haven't chosen before, but alas, unlucky that we didn't see Faster show up here. So let's see. We know that we're going to be going up against some pirates. So does anything here help us, prepare for that? Richer's pretty good. Gives a really nice, hefty bonus to colony income, colony corruption reduction, increased trade income, which isn't particularly relevant at this point because we haven't met that many factions nor signed many diplomatic agreements. And there's also tourism income, and we have a pretty good set of resort bases here. So might be worth doing this because it'll also give us more money, which we can build up our fleet with. Otherwise, multiply just gives a flat 25% population growth rate. This could be good since we have a number of colonies already established. We can use this to use this as basically a long-term investment. So that's a possible choice. And then there's Sneakier, which grants espionage, counter-espionage, and sabotage. But again, since we haven't really met that many factions and we're going to focus on fighting the pirates rather than stealing much from them, this one isn't particularly useful. So I think for the purposes of this overview and playthrough, we're going to go with Richer because it's more directly valuable to building up our fleet. So we're going to go with Richer. And first thing that happens is now we have the Great Direction Richer bonus, which is displayed up here. And interestingly, we also get the Direction Doubt feature, or mechanic for the Atuuk. So even though we thought it was a good idea that taking the Atuuk into a richer direction, some Atuuk are like, maybe this wasn't the right choice. So for the next couple of years, we're going to have -10 happiness in our empire, because maybe choosing a different great direction was actually the right move here. So I'm forcing more money. We need money for the ships, and some Atuuk are just not having it. Yep. Also, as Eric points out here, I'm very close to getting the victory condition for Richer here. So if there's something that we can do to get that, Richer is very good here. All right. So we're waiting for the Girax hyperdrive, and again, also hoping to see if we get a critical research success to push the button, hopefully. Otherwise, I think we can start building up our fleets. Let's see. I think we have frigates researched, right? Yes, we have frigates researched. I think we also want to have destroyers researched before we go on our major campaign, because destroyers is sort of where you get some heft for your fleets. So we'll do Girax hyperdrive, and then we'll research some destroyers and start building up our fleets. In the meantime, you can take a look at some of the Atuuk ships flying around in action. Here's the Atuuk spaceport. Turn off the interface. Have some freighters zipping on by, moving in, docking with the spaceport. Here's some of the Atuuk warships. Let's just slow this down and enjoy their view. What do we have here? This is a frigate. Nice kind of asymmetric design because, you know, the Atuuk engineering is based on what looks cool and what kind of just gets slapped onto the ship. So, for example, I wonder what the decision-making process was for this bulbous section. Is it for sensors? Is it just to house this nice weapon component here? Hard to say. Got some construction ships nearby. We have a heavy escort here. A bit more of a conventional symmetrical design with some asymmetry with these, again, bulbous parts. But yeah, I really like the look of the Atuuk ships. You know, this kind of metal slat construction with big old rivets. Just take some sheets of metal and put them on. So far so good. And then we have a research station here. Looks like a repurposed satellite that's just been kind of parked in orbit over the planet and just added a whole bunch of special doohickeys and doodads to make it more of a research station. Again, don't question Atuuk engineering. Just roll with it. All right, so let's get back to let's get down to business here. Speed this back up to ×8. I did get a notification that one of our other colonies has been set up, the Okotgak 5. So we have our Ugnari population starting to establish themselves. Not your business, 63. If it works, don't fix it. Exactly. The Atuuk, put together a ship and, it works. It flies, right? It shoots weapons. Alright, so let's see where this pirate base is. Atuuk intruders over here. So we're definitely going to want a pretty decent fleet because, again, Atuuk ships are not as good as some of the others, or some of the other galactic members. So that's why I'm aiming to get some destroyers first to buff out the fleet here. Artilus is encountered. Not currently of a worry because, again, pirates are our target for the moment. See any particular research shortages? There's always a shortage of research. Resource shortage. All right, so we have Gearx hyperdrive. So our ships are going to start upgrading, and we're really going to start investing in fleet construction with our once our interstellar destroyers get researched. Aha! We have a new Who is Great, which again will periodically pop up. So again, we have the same old Zekto Kuzentri. He really wants to show his great potential. And then we have Spy Uki Kuzentri. I wonder if they're from the same clan or something. The last name Kuzentri. Or maybe the first name is their last name. First part of their name is actually the name of their clan. Well, since Zekto Kuzentri has popped up a second time, I think we should mark Zekto Kuzentri for great potential. Kursame, with the power of the great direction, I'd imagine the way to play is to make sure you're fully taking advantage of the current direction. For sort of higher skill play, the whole point is trying to manage that random number generation, if you will, or kind of randomness of the great directions that you get with your strategic priorities. So sometimes maybe you're preparing for a war and suddenly the stronger great direction pops up and you're like, okay, perfect timing, let's pick this up, let's strengthen our ships and weapon damage and go forward. But other times, you're preparing for a war and suddenly, you get the best choice you get is friendlier or something like that. So yeah, there's an element of trying to use the Atuuk strengths to time your major moves to that. So speed, focus on exploration, fleet movements, for example. Yeah, exactly. Something like that. So I think because Zekto Kuzentri is our second time candidate, we have to mark Zekto Kuzentri as potential, or someone with great potential. So we're going to select that. And let's see. So he buffed up trade income, and he got energetic, plus 3% increase to all existing skills. So he's even better with trade. So now, if we ever get a future great one change, Zekto Kuzentri may pop up as a possible candidate. But otherwise, Zekto Kuzentri will just act as our trade income ambassador. Though, again, as I explained, I don't really want to use Zekto Kuzentri as the great one because I like inspiring presence to help everybody else. But we'll see whom calls to the Atuuk. All right, rapid unscheduled disassembly. Well, remember we had that fuel tanker that got damaged? Well, we had a exploration ship that was perhaps gunning the hyperdrive a little bit too much, has suddenly exploded. All aboard were killed. And again, we should probably build our ships more robustly. we probably should, but again, we're Atuuk, we're experimenting. We're trying to see what works with different construction methods. So here's another rapid unscheduled disassembly. So we'll dismiss that. Let's see here. So interstellar destroyers, researching. Let's see, any other new colonies have popped up. Again, we're probably going to leave this one for last. We have Barrett-Seen, decently sized planet, quality 56. This is again for the Ignari. We have plenty of money. Let's go for it. We'll queue this one up. Ancient defense stations. This is probably part of the base game story. Let's take a look. This is at Ordenog. That's part of the Hakonish story, because the Hakonish have spawned nearby. Defense stations. Yeah, we won't touch them. Good for you, exploration ship. Just don't go near them. Thank you very much. Klose-Ivanov, must be terrifying being a tourist on an Atuuk passenger ship. They're fine. I'm sure they're fine. Again, the Atuuk are all happy. They're on a passenger ship. They're on their way to expand expand their reaches at different colonies. So I think they're all good. All right. Well, I'd like to get into some combat before we wrap things up here. So I'm gonna get our second fleet here. I'm gonna top it up. I'm gonna get ready to just go fight some pirates and just see the Atuuk fleet in action. Yeah, get 15% discount on your passenger ship and your ticket. So we're going to build up our fleet, and then we're going to give them a manual order to go fight those pirates. Because again, I want to see my newly well-built Atuuk ships in action, doing the good work of the Atuuk. So we'll go fight one of these pirate bases, declare war on them, or cancel the protection agreement we have with them because it no longer fits our needs, and then we'll probably switch over to the Wekkarus. We'll take a short break, and then we'll go over to the Wekkarus. I'll show some art. Okay, so now I want this fleet here. We're going to stage it nearby. Go to the star. Get the fleet all organized. The colony established over at Barrett-Seen. Very good. And at this point, these are the Atuuk intruders. We'll get ready to attack them once we're ready to cancel the protection agreement. Who needs protection agreements anyway? Alright, our fleet's gathered. We shall cancel the protection agreement. Here's an Atuuk pirate. A lot more cybernetics and a lot less cute. Klose-Ivanov, so with the larger hull ships, it's more likely they'll just take damage, right? Yes. In general, it's... So rapid unscheduled disassembly obviously has a variety of effects that happen with, varied damage states. One of them obviously being the catastrophic destruction, and then more sort of granular levels of damage. Generally speaking, the bigger the ship is, the more resistant it should be to damage. But it's not improbable that a big ship like a battleship or a cruiser might not blow up from rapid unscheduled disassembly. But again, it depends on how active your other ships are, like construction ships or exploration ships. They're the ones that usually get stressed out more, right? Okay, so let's command our fleet to go. We have a couple stragglers here. All right, fleet's ready. Not your business. What about captured ships? Do they blow up too? Well, again, this is Atuuk-specific engineering. So if you capture ships like, from a debris field, or capture ships in a war that are not Atuuk, like Mortaland ships or whatever, their engineering is obviously much better, So rapid unscheduled disassembly does not extend to those. It's very specific to Atuuk hulls, because it is Atuuk hulls that have this occasional unscheduled event. Alright, so where is that pirate base? Let's go attack it. And we'll drop the speed down just to observe some combat. Alright, here we go. Atuuk ships approaching. See how well we do here. We've got some fighters coming out. Approaching the base here. We pump this up to ×2, maybe something else will happen. I mean, depending on how well we do here, we might not actually fare particularly well. Let's see. Focus fire on the base because we want to get rid of that. No need to focus on the pirates here because that's just going to split our fire. That was a rapid unscheduled assembly right there from getting fired at too much. Alright, and this is actually good timing for another great direction. It's time to choose a new great direction for our empire. Obviously perfect timing happening during combat. For the next 5 years, our empire will pursue one of the following directions. Each direction has different objectives that help lead us to ultimate victory. Which direction should we follow? So I want to show you what happens when we select a new great direction. In this case, it's going to be faster because we already have 6 of these unlocked. And faster might actually even help in this particular combat situation. So here are what the bonuses do for faster, which is grant engine research and hyperdrive research. So perhaps we want to utilize that after our interstellar destroyers get researched. Hyperjump speed, increase ship speed, and ship maneuvering. And then the victory objective for this particular great direction is to research the Advanced Engines project, which is one of the more advanced engine technology. So we're going to select this, faster. And as you can see, the new bonus pops up here. And now we have all of the victory conditions available here that we're trying to pursue. It's very possible that you may not, depending on your choices with the great direction, that you might not even see all 7 of them. That's very unlikely, highly improbable, but possible, because depending on your strategic priorities, you may be choosing one great direction over another. But in this case, I wanted to showcase all the objectives that you can get. Not your business. Are those permanent bonuses? No. So the way these bonuses work is when you select your great direction, you're going to get this bonus associated with that great direction for the duration of that great direction. Once you switch to a new great direction, those bonuses drop and you get a new set of bonuses. What doesn't drop is the actual victory condition. So you'll always have, like, once you select faster once or richer once, you'll always have the option to complete this victory objective. Obviously, once you complete it, you don't need to complete it again. Like, you've fulfilled that objective and you're good. But yeah, the bonuses will change for every great direction. All right, so let's see if we can take on this pirate base while we focus fire on it. We're barely scratching the shields here, so let's focus fire instead on the pirate ships, see if we can reduce their firepower. That might be a more beneficial tactic here. That's a lot of dead Atuuk ships. Oh, our first defense force has come to join us. Very nice. Reinforcements. Yeah, so let's just say this was an Atuuk combat study. This is why we needed our interstellar destroyers before we came in to take the base. But, you know, we're Atuuk. We're trying things. We're seeing if things work, and we'll just go back to the drawing board and build a even better fleet with better, robust engineering, and we'll come back and fight these pirates again. You know, never a bad thing. We have tons of cash anyway. So with that very Atuuk-style attempt to defeat the pirates, I think this is a good opportunity to pause and switch over to the Wekkarus. So we're going to take a short few-minute break. I'm going to put some artwork that our art team has put together that shows the shipset images as well as the city and a sample Atuuk city and Wekkarus environment to show. I'll be right back and we'll get into the Wekkarus. So thank you so much so far for watching. Don't go anywhere, and more coming shortly. Hey everybody, and we are back. So, since we're sort of at the midpoint of the stream, just want to do a quick recap. My name is Max. I'm an associate producer working over at Slytherin. I'm the lead on Atuuk and Wekkarus. The first half of the stream, we looked at some Atuuk gameplay as well as some features. We're about to get into the Wekkarus. We'll go over their faction screen, talk about some of their unique features and mechanics, and we'll do a bit of gameplay overview, just like we did with the Atuuk. Before we get into that, just a reminder that Distant Worlds 2 Factions Atuuk and Wekkarus is releasing tomorrow, so if you're interested in expanding your Distant Worlds 2 repertoire and library, tomorrow is a great chance to do that. Also, if anybody's been interested in picking up Distant Worlds 2, but has been waiting for a good time to do so, well, first of all, a new DLC is always a good time to do that, but also currently Distant Worlds 2 is part of the Humble Choice sale, so this is a great time to pick up Distant Worlds 2 from over that platform. And I believe I have a link I could share that could lead you directly there for anyone who is interested. There you go. Alright, so with that, let's get into the Wekkarus. Let's take a look at their faction screen. So first of all, here's a nice Wekkarus starter. This is a Wekkarus spaceport. I think while the Atuuk are very thematic and have really funky design, I think the Wekkarus in particular are really easy on the eyes and are particularly chef's kiss. So let's talk Wekkarus. So the Wekkarus, unlike the Atuuk, are actually the oldest starfarers, or at least as far as we know in the galactic community. The Wekkarus are the oldest and most mysterious faction to be added to Distant Worlds 2, where the Atuuk are basically taking their first steps yet again. The Wekkarus have been in the galaxy for a long time, and perhaps may not be of this galaxy. We don't know. There are tales and legends speaking that they've come from a really far away place, fleeing a ancient threat. Won't go further than that because that's part of their story. So I'll let you experience what their narrative entails once Atuuk Wekkarus releases tomorrow. So let's focus on what the Wekkarus are all about. So let's talk about their personality. The Wekkarus, unlike the Atuuk, are so a good comparison would be the Quamino. For anyone who's familiar with the Quamino, they're basically introverts. They don't really want to deal with diplomacy. They're like, everybody, just leave me alone. I want to research. The Wekkarus are maybe not necessarily introverts. They're just more, shall we say, skeptical of everybody else around them just because of what their story and origins entailed. So also it's just kind of hard to get to them because, as you can see by the colonization suitability here, the Atuuk love their deep ocean planets and they like anything with water. And unlike, say, some of the other factions that may live on sort of surface or not quite so deep areas of ocean worlds or water worlds, the Wekkarus live basically at the core of the planet, like deep, deep, deep underwater, and this will be reflected in some of their bonuses. So as a result, the Wekkarus don't really want to get involved with other factions. Again, they're not like Quamino who just want to stay away from others. The Wekkarus are just kind of standoffish, is a good way of putting that. They have an increased level of caution to sort of reflect that they're a bit reluctant in dealing with other factions. Their dependability, again, because they're alien and inscrutable and hard to tell what they're thinking. Their dependability is kind of fine or average. So there's that. One of their weaker side of things, because we found that the Wekkarus have some very strong advantages, as we'll discuss about their technology and unique features. They have a pretty low reproduction rate, so that means plagues in particular are really scary to the Wekkarus, so they can obviously offset some of the dangers of plagues with their research. But basically, Wekkarus are going to take a while to get going. Unlike the Atuuk that can spread out pretty quickly, grow their populations, the Wekkarus are much more steady and methodical in that sense. Their migration tendency is relatively low. They prefer to stick to their planets that they've settled well, in particular their deep ocean planets. And assimilation rate, again, they're not a particularly hostile faction. Like, they're not Beskara levels of, we want to conquer all, or Gizurians who are rowdy and want to eat you to feed their larvae. The Wekkarus, again, they're just standoffish, so they're a bit harder to assimilate compared to, say, Atuuk, but again, they're not too difficult to work with. As we mentioned already, their preferred worlds are ocean worlds. Anything with sand and desert they do not like, so maybe there might be the occasional planet with with a nice lake that they could settle, but you're unlikely to find those. They very much want to settle those deep ocean planets, which puts them into an interesting situation in comparison to the Akdarians and slightly the Quamino, because the Akdarians in particular also like ocean worlds. So this is an interesting dynamic that can happen if, say, Wekkarus and Akdarians are nearby. what would the kind of the territorial analysis look like. Hey, Lepus. All right, so let's take a look at the bonuses. Unlike the Atuuk, which were pretty simple, the Wekkarus have some more thematic bonuses that sort of show some of their strengths and weaknesses. One of their initial strengths is all research. Because they're this very ancient faction, they come from mysterious origins. They have this ancient wisdom and knowledge, which gives them a head start with a research bonus. Again, not as high as Quamino, or not as good as Quamino. Again, they're not scientists or research focused like the Quamino, but they are more intelligent, more wise about the galaxy. As we talked about their standoffish nature, the Wekkarus aren't particularly good with diplomacy, so they have a pretty hefty penalty on that. But also their standoffishness and their deep, dark caverns in ocean worlds do give them some advantages in counter-espionage, as well as affecting other factions with PSYOPs missions. Additionally, we gave them a plus 20% engine research bonus because the Wekkarus, as we mentioned, are the most ancient starfarers. They have a better understanding of how to fly through space or move through space. So they have a better understanding of speed and how to make their ships sleeker and more effective in moving through the cosmos. And we'll see that with some of their ship bonuses, which reflect that as well. Given their proximity to living in the cores or very close to the cores of ocean planets, they have an increased mining rate, so they can have a pretty healthy economy even if they don't expand as quickly or as much as, say, the Atuuk. Ship maintenance savings to reflect that the Wekkarus ships are slightly more specialized in speed and also their technology, pretty high quality weapons. They are more expensive though, so they require more maintenance savings in that regard. And as we come to the specialty of the Wekkarus ships, we've given them a nice hefty 40% ship speed bonus because we want to accentuate that Wekkarus ships they're glass cannons. They're fast, they're maneuverable, they can move around quickly, reposition during combat, maybe regroup quickly, but they're more expensive. They also have reduced hull points, which means if they get hit, they're more likely to keel over and blow up more easily, or they're easier to destroy once hit. That's why the Wekkarus would prefer to defeat the enemy quickly and then reposition so that they don't get caught. And in terms of characters, because they're not so great with diplomacy, or they don't want to participate as much in diplomatic negotiations with other factions, a reduced chance of ambassadors, but also increased chance of scientists and spies. Scientists because ancient knowledge, spies because deep dark caverns in an ocean world makes you a pretty proficient spy, especially in terms of counter-espionage. Now, as I talked with the Atuuk, with the control update that we released recently, we did add a new feature, which is psychic resistance, specifically to support the Atuuk and Wekkarus. Unlike the Atuuk, who are essentially immune to psychic abilities, the Wekkarus are resistant, but they're not immune to psychic abilities. So they'll likely have an easier time fighting, say, Shakturi. But Shakturi, given enough force and power, will still be able to psychically overpower the Wekkarus if you have Return of the Shakturi and obviously Atuuk and Wekkarus owned and installed. So and I won't go into the origins of that. I'll let you experience the Wekkarus story once the Atuuk and Wekkarus DLC releases tomorrow. So let's talk about their mechanics. Their main one is down here, but we'll start with Flashes of the Past. So Flashes of the Past is... so the Wekkarus have this interesting ability to connect with their ancestors. It's this mysterious feature that their faction specifically has. No other faction has this ability to kind of... It's not really summon... It's the ability to manifest or commune with their ancestors, either through memory or through stress. And we have this set of features that reflect this. Flashes of the Past is specifically related to their scientists. If their scientists achieve a research success, you'll get a pop-up giving you a choice of 2 skills that you can add to that scientist. Do note, however, that you need to have a scientist available that has less than 4 existing skills, so this is a relatively situational feature, but I think it's quite thematic to help improve your scientists to, again, gain access to this ancient wisdom and knowledge that has been lost over the years, especially given the great cataclysm that happened before, or prior to Distant Worlds 2. Next, to accentuate the Wekkarus kind of standoffishness and desire to keep to themselves more often, we have Deep Labyrinth, which is if a foreign spy is detected, the Wekkarus have a 50% chance of triggering this event. The event will allow you to imprison or even execute the spy at that point, and specifically without a diplomatic penalty. So normally factions, there are dice rolls going on when you have spies on counter-espionage and an opponent spy is trying to either steal some tech or cause trouble for you through espionage. Basically, the Wekkarus have an extra layer of defense or an extra layer of activity that they can affect the espionage game by, gathering up enemy spies like trading cards, basically. Because again, the Wekkarus do not want others poking into their humble abodes. Let's see here. Dancing Camel 4. Will Flashes of the Past feature kick in when any scientist makes a critical success event, or only for Wekkarus scientists? So the event itself should really only affect Wekkarus scientists. So if, let's say, you're a Wekkarus faction and you have, say, some Tekin in your empire, and you have, say, a couple of Tekin spies, but also a couple of Wekkarus spies, Flashes of the Past should really only affect the Wekkarus spies. Because, again, it's their innate ability. It's not like, oh, we command you Tekin scientists to have memories of your ancestors. It doesn't quite work that way. Alright, next feature here is Riches from the Deep. Since the Wekkarus are very proficient in living in deep ocean worlds and living at the deep core of a planet, the Wekkarus are quite adept at finding new resources and extracting valuable resources from their ocean worlds. So what this event does is periodically, for your ocean worlds, you may get access to a new resource. This could be a construction resource that's associated with ocean planets, or it could be a luxury resource associated with that ocean planet. So given enough time and enough ocean colony planets, the Wekkarus can really develop a powerful ocean-specialized economy with resources obviously specialized to ocean planets. You're not suddenly going to be seeing Osalia crystal, or very unlikely to see Osalia crystal on ocean or deep ocean planets, but at least your deep ocean planets will have more bang for your buck, so to speak. Now on to the flagship feature for the Wekkarus. I mentioned that the Wekkarus have this strange and mysterious ability to kind of manifest or commune with their ancestors in moments of stress. So their flagship feature is Ancestors Among Us, which hits different parts of gameplay. This will hit both space combat, ship-to-ship combat. This will hit ground combat, so invasions of various kinds, and also characters. So let's walk through this step by step. So in moments of stress, there's a chance that, at least in space combat, the Wekkarus will manifest these ghost ships, which will typically be reflections or duplicates of ships that you already have in combat. So they're going to be pretty solid ships, because the Wekkarus ships themselves are pretty good, or have good technology. And but it's a relatively low chance of these happening. So you need to have large enough fleets and enough battles happening at any given moment to see these ghost ships manifest. This will also happen with ghost ground troops. If, for example, you are being invaded, or if you're invading another faction's planet, there's a chance, depending on the number of ground troops you have active, there's a small chance that you'll have ghost troops appear and aid you in battle. Now, the whole point about these ghost ships and ghost troops is that these can, if the battles are really close, these can turn the tide of combat. I've had several games in development where, I had an important planet get invaded, and I had a relatively small garrison. But because of a ghost character appearing, which we'll talk about in a moment, but also additional ghost troops, I kind of shifted the balance in my favor and was able to actually beat back the invaders. Obviously, you don't have much control over when these ghost troops and characters and ships manifest or appear, but at least they can come in handy in moments of stress, again, combat, invasion, and whatnot. Now, in terms of characters, each of the different character types has a Ancestor Among Us event associated with it. Specifically for scientists, if you have a critical research or critical failure, there's a chance that a ghost scientist will appear, and they'll appear in your list, so you'll be able to view them. And these scientists should be quite good. So it's basically, even if you get a good scientific event or a bad scientific event, a Wekkarus ancestor ghost will pop up and either help you or try to mitigate some of the damage that you may have gotten from that critical failure. Let's see. Can you get a ghost character appear with negative traits? Picturing a drunken general ghost appearing and messing up my ground invasion. Well, ideally, no. Ideally, these ghost characters are supposed to be of good quality, so they should come with good skills, and they should come with good traits. And no, you should not be seeing drunk ghost admirals or, ghost whatever. But yeah, they should be good. They should have positive traits and positive skills. But if you do see a drunken general, do report that. But that should not happen. But it would be pretty funny, but not for very long, I imagine. All right, so that's a scientist. Ambassadors and spies. So unlike scientists, generals, and admirals, with ambassadors and spies, we don't generate new characters. We have specific events because they're on a slightly smaller scale and more specialized. So, for example, with the ancient ambassador Ancestors Among Us, is whenever you sign a major treaty, like free trade agreement, research agreement, or a defense treaty, there's a chance that an ancient ambassador will manifest and give you an additional boost to the faction. So it's basically the ambassador will help you further with whatever diplomatic strategy you're pursuing. So if it's like with a major empire that you're trying to ally with, but you have to start off with a free trade agreement before you can get to, say, a migration treaty. You sign this free trade agreement, then an ambassador manifests, like, it improves your diplomatic relationship with that faction, which will make it easier to deal with that faction going forward. So that's that. And then with the spy, this one will happen relatively rarely, but will occasionally pop up. If a spy of yours on a mission gets detected, specifically when going on a mission in another faction, there's a small chance that a ghost spy will manifest and basically block your spy from getting captured. So again, it's that extra level of security for Wekkarus characters when performing espionage tasks. And then finally, Ghost Admirals and Ghost Generals. These perform relatively similarly. Ghost Ghost Generals are a little bit simpler. Ghost Generals will occasionally manifest on planets where you have ground combat happening. They're more likely to manifest where you don't have a general, but they could occasionally manifest even if you already have, say, a live general there. And again, the Ghost General that manifests should be quite good, so they can turn the tide of battle depending on the situation. And with admirals, it's pretty much the same thing as with generals, only with space combat. You may have a Ghost Admiral manifest in combat to take command of a fleet, and therefore give bonuses and shift the odds in your favor. So keep your eyes open for these. Because we know Ancestors Among Us triggers across multiple areas of the Wekkarus Empire or gameplay, you may not see Ancestors Among Us, like the pop-up message, trigger all the time, because otherwise you'll just get spammed by it. So just keep your eyes open in combat scenarios. Obviously you'll get a message first time it happens saying like, oh, there's this new ability or this new event that happens. You can go view it. But generally speaking, ghost troops and ghost ships will appear occasionally during combat. Do we know if the DLC will be included in the DW Legacy bundle? Lepus, I believe we're going to have a faction-specific bundle on release where you'll be able to purchase Ikaro Daiut, Kwamino Gazurians, and Atuuk Wekkarus together at a discounted price. That's the one that I'm aware of. I'd need to get back to you on specifically the DW Legacy bundle. Can't recall right now. Alright, so next thing tied with Ancestors Among Us that I want to go over, and then we'll get into gameplay because I've spent a long time talking. Part of the Wekkarus story, we've added these unique Wekkarus artifacts tied to their ancient origins, specifically the Cenotaph of the First Generation, Airship of the Ancestors, and Orb of Ancestral Strength. They are generically useful for other factions. They have various benefits like increasing quality for characters or increasing the power of your ships and stuff like that, and also granting psychic resistance a little bit. So if another faction gathers or gets one of these Wekkarus artifacts, they can benefit from it. But the Wekkarus in particular benefit even more from these Wekkarus specific artifacts by increasing the chance of Ancestors Among Us triggering. So what you really want to do is participate in the Wekkarus story and do your best to gather this trio of artifacts to buff up your Ancestors Among Us, so you should start seeing more ghost ships appearing, more troops appearing when you get attacked. And this way you'll empower your faction even further. As you mentioned, Korosama, yep, you wanna be hunting these down, and it's directly tied into their victory conditions as well. So we're enticing you to go pursue these artifacts as the Wekkarus. Will these artifacts still be present even if we have the race events unchecked when creating a game? So these are specifically tied to the story, so you're unlikely to see these appear if you have race events or the story events unchecked. That's why if you want to see the full breadth of the power of the Wekkarus artifacts, you're going to want the story on. Otherwise, we have a couple of unique traits specifically for spies and scientists, because that's where the character specialty is for the Wekkarus. And then ancestral memory is specifically related to ghost admirals and generals, where they specifically have additional positive traits. Because when you get your ghost characters, you want them to be good. You don't want them to be kind of drunken, as we talked about earlier. Now, finally, for the Wekkarus, to talk about their unique technology. Unlike the Atuuk, the Wekkarus have been around for long enough that they have their own tech. The Super Pulse Wave Cannon, just like the boom device with the Atuuk, is related to their megaship, their planet destroyer, and it's their special pulse wave weapon, which is a slightly better version of the initial blaster weapon. It's the pulse wave cannon. This is found for their fighter, small, medium, and large weapon variants. They have a new tractor beam called the constrictor beam, which is a more high-powered tractor beam. If you're interested in using tractor beams, say for example for capturing or disrupting enemy fleets. We introduced also a new shield enhancement component called the Hydra Core capacitor. In the base game, we introduced the quantum capacitor, which is basically another way you can outfit your ships and improve your defensive capabilities. With the Wekkarus, since they have better understanding of energy and just generally of space travel and shields to some extent, and use of water in particular, hence Hydra Core, they're able to utilize water in an interesting way to power up their shields better with this specific component. And then finally, they have Defensive Caverns, which is a new facility for them. It's basically an early Tech Level 1 defensive facility to help resist invasions. Do note that defensive caverns can only be built on ocean worlds, because how would you build defensive caverns in a world that has no water, like a desert planet? So this just makes Wekkarus planets even more difficult to take over with invasions. So they should be a pretty hard nut to crack. And then in terms of their race victory conditions, as I explained, some of their victory conditions are related to going through their story and picking up the artifacts. Also related to their more espionage-centric gameplay, they want to be capturing more foreign... they want to capture more characters, and obviously tied in with Deep Labyrinth, this helps them. Also lose the fewest colonies. The Wekkarus don't like giving up their territory, especially their deep ocean planets, so try to fortify your planets. And then their last victory condition is control a good portion of deep ocean planets or deep ocean colonies in the galaxy, because again, the Wekkarus love their deep ocean worlds. And then here's their infantry. A bit better than average, but they're not the strongest. And then in terms of their relations, they're relatively neutral with this set of factions: Tikan, Hakonish, Ikaros, Xenox, and Ugnari, and then they don't particularly like Beskar, Daiud, Gazurians, or Slukin. Alright, with that said, I know I've been rambling on for quite a bit. Let's get into some Wekkarus gameplay, shall we? And we'll try to get some of these ancestor events to happen. So I know that there's some pirates nearby. Perhaps we can get some combat with them, and we can. I'm sure there are going to be some spies poking into our territory. So Deep Labyrinth, I'm sure, will pop up. So let's take a look at some of Wekkarus' ships and what our situation is. This is already early mid-game, transitioning into mid-game. We're getting ourselves set up. There are quite a number of interesting independent colonies around this. For example, there's a Tikan independent colony here over at Barrett, which is part of the Wekkarus story. I won't go into spoilers with that. We'll let you experience that upon release. Then we have a couple of Mordelin independent colonies to our south. And we had an Ekdarian colony right next to us, so just very luckily we were able to essentially pull the Ekdarians under our wing, and now we have an extra ocean faction. Now to our north we have a Tikan Empire that really annoyingly took over this Sekharan independent colony. I was really eyeing for it, and I was investing money, but the Tikan got to it first, so that just puts me in a bad mood with the Tikan. I might want to go and fight them, especially since we already have some Tikans in our empire. Further north, there's a small Xenox empire, as well as a establishing Icaro empire. So we're kind of in an expanding phase. We're building up our fleet. We're researching planetary governance because we have a few colonies. We want to build planetary administration centers to buff up our economy further. And we're sort of at a crossroads on what we want to do. We can be more aggressive here and start planning a war with the Tikans to go take over Durog. The other option, sort of a more Wekkarusi approach, is like, okay, we're annoyed by the Tikans, but we're gonna let them be, and instead we're gonna focus on taking up these independent colonies, because there's some human independent colonies over to the galactic northwest over here. We still have the Mortallon to pick up, and Mortallon, as we know, are quite strong with their troops, so that's a pretty good faction to have. Also more access to desert planets. And then also we have some more humans down here. But I'm sort of more interested in the independent colonies here. And there's also a Quamino independent colony here, which I'm a little bit less interested in because it's a relatively small colony. I want to focus on the Mortallon colonies first. So let's see how things develop. And generally, we're going to try and build up our fleet and get ready for a war with the Tikan. We even have a invasion fleet prepared, and I believe we have a armor barracks here that we're getting ready to recruit some armor units to help prepare us for an invasion in case we want to go down that route. So we're going to let the game run, see how things develop, but generally we want to go punish the Tikan for taking the Sekarans away from us. Be able to build strong ground troops with the Mortallon colony. Exactly. So I do have a decent chunk of money, but I want to spend some of that on recruiting some armor units, which is what we're going to do shortly. So we'll add a couple more here, just to get them ready for a possible invasion fleet, and we'll let the game run. Since we're preparing for an invasion as well, we want to do some research in improved assault tactics for our units, and we want to do improved logistics to improve our economy as well, because we have a pretty large army at this point, so we want to reduce their upkeep cost generally. Is there a cap to the percentage quality increase to scientists and leaders? I don't recall exactly, but there are really only a few artifacts and buildings that can really buff that up. So yes, you can get the quality up to really high levels, which would mean the characters that you get is quite high. I believe it can go further beyond 100% because the increased quality, of course, means more likely to have good skills and good traits that pop up for that character. Alright, so we're also going to see if there's some pirates that we can get rid of. So these Wekkarus pirates, the Dreadfang pirates, and Blood Gangsters, I think with those we can probably go ahead and wipe them out. We have a pretty solid fleet here, in particular the second fleet, quite strong, and the reason why it's quite strong is because of our unique technology, which I'll just quickly show with the pulse weapons over here. We have early pulse weapons and then pulsed wave weapons. This is the Wekkarus unique blaster weapon that should give them an edge in combat. And then just to do a showcase of some of their other technology here, we have the restrictive tractor beams, which is the constrictor beam, as we talked about, in their unique features and technology. And then down below here, we should have the Hydrocore capacitor, which adds countermeasures and has a little bit of shield recharge. But in comparison to the quantum capacitor, which has more shield resistance, the liquid energy storage has slightly higher shield recharge rate and again increased countermeasures. Because again, the Wekkarus ships, their defense focuses more on countermeasures and not being hit in the first place, rather than just shrugging off damage directly. All right, Oh, and I should also show you the caverns. Here we go, the secure caves. It comes off of the armor plating technology. It increases bombardment resistance and ground attack resistance, as well as giving you colony defense and troop recovery rate, but again, can only be built on deep ocean and ocean planets, so you really want to hold on to those as the Wekkarus. Okay, so Strange Discovery by Ixokrun Spirit. This is the Hive. We're not particularly worried about that right now. We're going to focus on fighting some pirates. So it's time to cancel the protection agreement, and we're going to go ahead and queue an attack order on this base here. And we'll see how our fleet responds to that. It's probably going to repair and retrofit before going in. So we have a Daiute faction. Wily Daiute totality encountered. Where are they? Where do we encounter them? So they're clearly not anywhere nearby, so I'm not particularly worried. Again, the Tekin are more of a concern for me, as well as the pirates. Let's see, so we're repairing at Coruscant, which is one of our colonies over here. Let's see. Some of our defense forces aren't fully beefed up, so we're going to top up these as we get ready to go fight the pirates. So what's probably going to happen is the second fleet is going to get to Coruscant, get refueled, repaired, and then going to go for the pirates. We also have first defense force coming in to investigate pirates. So here's some combat. Here we're hoping for the ancestors among us to trigger. And also we added a new sound effect for the Wekkarus pulse wave weapons. So let's listen to that. Some pirate fighters attacking our Wekkarus ships. So it's probably going to try and escape. Let's see, do we have any ghost ships that have triggered yet? It's unlikely that we'll see some ghost ships at the moment because it's a relatively small combat happening here. But given enough time, a ghost ship may show up. It is quite a tough nut to crack here, especially with the pirate cruiser coming on out. Bunch of our ships here got disabled, so these pirates were a bit too much for our defense force to deal with. Alright, so let's see where our second fleet is at. Still working on repairs, so we'll let this run. A lot of research stations here. We obviously want research because that's one of the Wekkarus' strength. Got a couple more due to exploration. Erdoban is a little far out, but I think I want to go grab that as well. Abandoned ship encountered over here. Definitely investigate it, because why not? More ships that we can disassemble and get some more technology. Alright, how is our invasion fleet doing? Pretty good. So I think we're getting relatively close to our to the end of our stream here. So I want to see if I can help trigger some of these Ancestor Among Us events, in particular with a invasion. So we're going to get ready to go and invade Durog and take the Sekharan independent colony away from the Tikans. So we're going to move the 5th Invasion Fleet over to Flairasas and stage it there. And just to show some more Wekkarus unique features here, I believe I have one of their artifacts. Indeed I do. So the Cenotaph of the first generation is one of the artifacts, as we discussed, that you can find as part of the Wekkarus story. These are some of its bonuses here. A bunch of leader quality, general quality, admiral quality, or just general character quality. And this specifically affects any faction who possesses this artifact, and also adds a little bit of psychic resistance. So other factions like the humans or the Xenox or the Beskara, who may not currently have psychic resistance, they also want these powerful Wekkarus artifacts, because once they gain them, they gain a bonus to their psychic resistance to then help fight, in this case, most likely Shakturi, if you have Return of the Shakturi installed. So let's get ready for an invasion on Durag. So we have our 5th invasion fleet preparing. What we're hoping to see here is, during our invasion, we'll see some ghost troops, and also hopefully a ghost character will appear. And since we have the Cenotaph of the first generation, it's more likely that we'll see a character appear. Obviously not a guarantee, because there's some chance, stress. You can't ask stress to just do its thing, but there's a possibility of it happening. Speaking of which, we have a ghost character right here. The reason why we didn't see a pop-up message of this is previously in my gameplay here, a pop-up saying like, hey, there's a ghost admiral appearing, had already occurred, explaining the first time part of this event. But we can take a look at this ghost character here. It appeared commanding the 1st Defense Force, Sentry of Ixakrun, probably during combat with some pirates. And first of all, it looks more ghostly, and it's marked as a ghost. And as you can see, it's a pretty decent admiral. Maybe not the best admiral that's been around for a long time with lots of experience and lots of skills and traits, but a pretty decent one. Again, admirals can be quite handy in a moment's notice during combat. Again, getting a free solid character is always great. So let's see here. Let's get ready for the invasion. And Tikans, how about we declare war on you? And we're going to take back Durag from you, because I'm very annoyed that you've taken it from us. So we're gonna prepare and invade Horizon. Alright, off we go. And hopefully this will be a good climactic end to the stream as we capture Horizon, or at least engaging our opening moves against the Tikan. We're going to slow it down as we approach. And there's a Tikan defense fleet, as well as a spaceport. So let's see if they'll let us drop off our troops. They'll probably try to move and intercept, but our escorts hopefully will be able to shield them off. Yep, they're moving in. We have our initial troops coming in. And invasion should be beginning. That's a pretty massive Tikan force there, so I was not particularly prepared for this. But again, this is all for demonstration purposes. Here's hoping the reinforcements come in. And they should be landing now. So now let's just pay attention to this combat here, see if any ghost troops arise, or say a ghost general. The fact that we already have a live general present here means it's probably unlikely that we'll see a ghost general appear, but it's possible we may see some ghost troops appear, given enough time, of course. But yeah, this was a rash war move because we wanna liberate the Sekarans from the oppressive Tikans. So we went in to poke the Tikan force now, and basically do aggressive reconnaissance as such. Okay, it does seem like in this case the Tekin forces are too strong, and we didn't quite have enough force to really be able to generate ghost troops. If I prepared more, built some more invasion ships, loaded them up with some more troops, based on the increased size of the army, there would be a higher chance of ghost troops appearing. So in this case, we're going to beat feet. Unfortunately, that ship didn't make it out. But now we're at war with the Tekins, and I was not expecting them to be as well prepared to defend in this case. But we did see Ghost Admiral as part of our fight against the pirates. And we'll let it run just a little bit to see if maybe a Tekin spy or maybe an Icaro spy comes by and maybe Deep Labyrinth. So we'll give it a couple more minutes, we'll see what happens, and then we'll wrap up the stream there. While things are sort of cooling off, and hooray, we've defeated the Dreadfang pirates. Can even go ahead and... there we go. Perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for to end the stream. So, Deep Labyrinth. So, Gamma Perfection. Let's see what that faction is. Gamma Perfection is this Icaro faction that's sort of further out. Strategically, this faction might be quite useful to befriend because they're sort of on the other side of the Tekins, so if we ally with them, we can then maybe get a defense treaty going and then squish the Tekins from both sides. But clearly right now, the Icaro are participating in underhanded espionage. So with this event, we were able to detect an enemy spy, in this case an Icaro spy, and we can either imprison them or execute them. And normally, if you either imprison them or execute them by normal means, by going to the spy screen and either recruiting them or executing them or whatnot, you get a negative diplomatic penalty. This, because the Deep Labyrinth is so deep and oh no, the Icaro lost contact with their spy, you can imprison or execute the spy without diplomatic penalty. Trying to spy on squid people, not a good idea. Exactly. Trying to dig out information from the Wekkarus, not the best choice. It's possible, but very hard. So, in this case, I want to imprison them in case I want to trade them back to the Icaro for diplomatic bonus. So if we take a look here at the prisoners, we should see Putar Mechu pop up. We're going to imprison them here. And in this case, this is a pretty solid spy, I must say. Not particularly good in counter-espionage, but that's why they've been sent on an espionage mission. So in this case, I'm going to use them as a bargaining chip to return them to the Icaro for diplomatic bonus. Or through, say, a trade agreement or whatever. Whatever the case. But basically, this feeds in directly into our victory condition here, which is capture the most foreign characters in the galaxy, which I'm currently competing with the Daiut, because Daiut are also quite focused on espionage, or they're the espionage faction in Distant Worlds 2. So Deep Labyrinth will help us catch up to them. So yeah. So at this point, we've been going for a couple hours. We've gone through the Atuuk, showed a little bit of gameplay, gone through the Wekkarus, and showed a little bit of gameplay here. Obviously, our strategists didn't particularly prepare very well. We had a very limited invasion force prepared to go liberate the Sekaruns of Durog, but we were expecting that the Tekins weren't, or we were hoping that the Tekins didn't have much of a defensive presence there, so we were hoping to just walk over them, which clearly that didn't happen, and now it's going to be a longer, protracted war. So, to wrap up our stream, as a reminder, Distant Worlds 2 Factions Atuuk Wekkarus is releasing tomorrow, Thursday, April 3rd. If you're interested in expanding your content for Distant Worlds 2, this is a great time to pick up a new faction expansion. Also, Distant Worlds 2 is currently part of the Humble Choice sale. I posted a link previously in the chat, but I'll post it up again. If you've been on the fence and are interested in picking up Distant Worlds 2 for yourself, this is a great way to support us for continued development of Distant Worlds 2. And otherwise, thank you all for the stream. I hope Atuuk and Wekkarus suits your fancy with the young, naive furballs and the ancient and mysterious elderly Wekkarus who've been around for a long time. And we'll see. Perhaps I'll do some more streams in the future, depending on how things pan out with content and development with Distant Worlds 2 in the future. To wrap up, we'll do another show of some artwork, and then we'll close down. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have a great day. Atuuk and Wekkarus release tomorrow. Take care, everybody.